Thank you. So we've done this part, done a welcome. We had some time to kind of settle in. We've had an opportunity, hopefully, to do what you need to do to prepare for us to be together. And again, please feel free as you have needs that come up. Feel free to take care of those. We're going to have a break this morning, but should there be anything that you need between now and then, please feel free to do that and take care of those needs. Next slide, please. Okay. So just a reminder here, if you could just in the chat share your name, your organization and role, and then in your Zoom Square name, if you could let us know if you're an HVAC member. For those of us who are either DCY staff or part of our trio, if you could take a moment to do that too, it just helps us with taking attendance. It also helps us with any breakouts or anything where we need to move into rooms, or it just helps us know who's with us this morning. And if you are here and are a guest, if you could put guest behind your name as well, so that we know who's in the room with us. So we'll just take a couple minutes to do that. And if you need some help with that, please let us know and we'll be able to assist you in getting that done. I'm seeing names change, so thank you so much for doing that. And I'm also seeing names come into the chat. Thank you for that as well. So the other thing I'm going to ask you to do is, if in your workspace, if you can find a sticky note or a piece of paper that you're going to be able to kind of hang on and keep track of for 2025. If you could get that and something to write with, if you're more comfortable opening up a page on your computer to kind of do our check-in this morning, that would be great. So I'll give you just a little bit of time to either get a piece of paper, open up a document that you can type into in your computer, or whatever it is. If you have a notebook, whatever writing surface you want to pick and something to write with, or so just give you a couple minutes to do that. And I know names are still coming into the chat. Right. Move on to the next slide. All right. Hopefully you got an agenda. And so this is our agenda. We have a lot of updates today, some time to connect. We've had a significant number of changes, so we wanted to provide some time to kind of go through those, answer people's questions, kind of hear your wonderings, also just hear how things are going for you within your agency as well. So as you looked at our agenda, there's probably a lot of kind of sharing of information and sharing of updates. So we figured, just given everything that's been happening, it would be good to have a meeting where we do that. And that felt kind of pretty significant and heavy. So we didn't want to add a ton to the agenda. Also, just wanted to highlight one correction in the agenda. There will be no data subcommittee. I forgot to take that off. There'll be no data subcommittee today. So our meeting will be done after our business meeting for the day. So that we'll give our data committee, subcommittee, HVAC members a gift of time. So I wanted to again just highlight that. Okay, next slide, please. So hopefully you've had a chance to get your writing utensil, get something that you can with. So I just want us to take a couple of minutes. So if you can write down one hope you have for 2025, you feel free to write more than one if you have one, and then an action or two that you were planning to do this year to take care of yourself. So our two prompts, just gonna give us a couple of minutes to jot that down, and some may have already done this. So I'll just give us a minute or two here to jot that down, and then I'll ask those who are comfortable sharing to share out loud or put that into the chat. People needing some more time, or feeling like you're ready? I see Malia shared her plan to take care of herself in the chat. Is there anybody else who's willing to share your hope or a hope for 2025?
I am. I'm new here, so I decided I'm just going to jump right in with both feet, Nellie, if you'll let me.
I will.
Okay, yeah. I'll be bold. So I have a bold goal of 2025. I'm new in my role. Maria Vasquez is on here as well, so I'm going to be taking her role. I'm director of early learning, but I'm going to be doing the direct supervision of parents as teachers. So my goal is to have high quality coordinated service deliveries. So working together here in our early learning division. But the self-care part is something I really, really work on and I hold near and dear, because if I'm taking care of myself, the research says that the people around me will be influenced by that. So I am dominating, that's a strong word, but I'm dominating my environment and making choices that align with who I am, because I'm calling that in. And I'm stepping up to myself with integrity in all that I do. So those are my calls to action for 2025 in the way that I'll take care of myself. So.
Love, love, love that, Catherine. And thank you so much for jumping right in, and welcome to looking forward to having you be part of HVAC. And
Thank you.
Maria, we are so grateful for the time that you've dedicated to being part of HVAC as well. So I'm glad that you were able to be here together as part of that handoff.
Well, I would love to share my hopes, because mine are just, I'm full of restoration and restorative thoughts. I have hope for health, safety, restoration of faith, um, love and patience, and kindness for all. I think we just need so much more gentle thinking and warmness with, especially with the world we're walking in today and together. And so my hope is that we find places where the calm is better than the storm that's brewing. And my plan for self-care is a lot of concerts this year. I know they're extremely expensive, but I find so much um, rest and, well, it's not very restful, but um, like restorative joy and laughter and body release and just through dancing and singing and just having a good time. And so my husband and I are already on the plan for the concert tours all around the 3 states up here. So there's some good stuff coming. So that's my plan. Hope somebody would like to join us in the concert tour. But thank you all. This has been an amazing journey for me to be a part of the build out of home visiting and the work. 17 years of being in family services and restorative care for children and mommies and Grammies and kin caregivers has just been is just part of who I am. And so I look forward to continuing that in a new adventure, wherever that may take me. So thank you all for letting me be a part of this beautiful work.
Thank you so much for sharing, Maria. And depending on the concerts, I might be there with you. Thank you. I see all the chats as well. Thank you so much for sharing. And oh, Samantha. I'm gonna have to remember that, and hopefully you'll share with us how it goes. I know it's little ways before we get to October, but that's exciting. That is exciting. I don't know anything about Orange Theory, but I just noted that's something I need to now go Google a little bit more about. So again, thank you all so much for sharing what you're hoping for in 2025. So again, I'm hoping that you keep these somewhere, so we'll revisit them. I'm seeing a lot around restoration. It's good to see that there are things people are actively already doing or thinking about for self-care. Right. For me, I'm wanting to be way more committed to actually doing self-care. So not having it just be a word or phrase that I say, but actually having some actions behind it. And I think it is going to be critical if for no other time, at least this year, just given everything that we are already kind of working through and doing. So I am well, as you think of things or as things come up for you, please feel free to share those in the chat. If there are other resources or things that you're actively doing that could be of support to the rest of us, it'd be great for us to kind of have a toolkit of things that we can draw on as we make our way through this year. And then our last meeting of the year, I'll check back in and see kind of how you were doing with your self-care and how the hopes that you had kind of laid out at the beginning of the year have turned out, or if there are changes, or so we'll definitely check back in with this. Again, so much. Next slide, please. So I'm going to transition now over to Renee, who's going to talk us through kind of, this next portion of our agenda. Thanks, Renee.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Renee Toulson with DCYF Home Visiting Team. I lead the team of folks who make all the contracting out for direct services to all of our lead implementing agencies. And I was thinking, as I was considering all the things I'm going to be saying today, and I know some of the things you're going to be hearing from other folks, is wanting to just name that a lot of things are going to be preceded by because we don't know, or because of the budget, or because of this. And so there's going to be a lot of times when either things are going to be held or a lot of uncertainty. And I think we're already, people have already noted that in their self-care and goals for the year. And just, again, wanted to say that kind of own that, a lot of what I'm going to say in this next update has a lot of those phrases in it. And that can be deeply unsatisfying to all of us. So, so that being said, the first thing, because I'm going to talk a little bit about the 6109 services that were funded for us to implement home visiting and training and supports for home visiting programs to families who are impacted by synthetic opiates who are in the child welfare system or referred from the child welfare system. So this really important programming that we were working on a competitive procurement during the fall. During that time, we learned that our process for procurement needed to be upgraded to a formal solicitation. So we canceled that procurement, reissued it as a formal solicitation in order for the contracts to be valid, and because of the way we're going to be paying contractors for slots, whether or not those slots were filled. So we reissued that procurement in the fall. I don't know how many of you are aware of that. I might have mentioned that at our December meeting, because I can't exactly remember the timing of all of this, because it kind of hit us in the face pretty quickly. We had a number of programs reapply, basically. We brought in a couple of new programs applied as well. And then literally on the day that the applications were due, hours after the application were due, because 6109 programming was not in the Governor Inslee's proposed budget in December, we had uncertainty about it, but we went forward with it. And then in January, the new governor, Ferguson, issued principles on where he wanted to go with budget, and great deep concerns about the budget deficit that we're all facing, and a strong advisement against implementing any kind of pilot. So our agency leadership decided on the very day that the applications for this new solicitation were due that they did not want to go forward with programming, because we couldn't guarantee that there'd be funding after June 30th. And those of you who know anything about home visiting, it is not a spigot. You don't turn it on and off. It requires, ramp up for expansion, requires a lot of investment on the part of agencies and hiring. And that program would have just begun to be underway as of June 30th. And so, so they canceled our procurement. And we met with our applicants. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration. I think the biggest thing we learned was how deep the commitment is to serving these families, and how important the need is. I mean, important programming would be to support that. So, we don't have funding for that, but I think we're continuing to explore within our existing service array, is there a way we could potentially impact that. And I think Nina's going to talk a little bit about the training dollars, because that didn't die because we figured out some ways, and well, she'll talk about that after I'm done with my presentation. So that's the good, the kind of the light in all of that is that there's a really strong commitment from the field and from our team and from DCYF, and still trying to figure out how to support families with these deep needs. So that's the first update, is 6109. Our general fund expansion, however, has money allotted in the budget right now. It was, we got general fund dollars that were $1 million to fund home visiting slots. And that right now, it's in the ongoing budget. It does not require legislation to move forward. So while we don't know where the budget is going, our knowns are that it is in our budget right now. It's in the DCYF operating budget. So that procurement was not canceled. And you can go to the next slide. As a result, 6 programs through the procurement process were determined to receive funds that will amount to 84 new home visiting slots. And you can see the 6 programs. So Catholic Charities in Yakima, Chinese Information and Service Center delivering Parent Child Plus in South King County, also Horn of Africa in King and Pierce counties doing Parent Child Plus. Early Head Start in Spokane County, another 10 families through Eastern Washington University. And then Hummingbird Indigenous Family Services offering Family Spirit to serve 14 families in King, Pierce, and Snohomish. And then finally El Centro de la Raza, not finally, but just in my not linear approach to this list, serving 18 families in King County. The great thing about this list is look at the array of models that we are going to be funding. And so to be able to say, I also will say that our application for funding for here, we got more than 3 times the request than we were able to fund. So it's important to know that even in a time of great uncertainty, our programs are very dedicated to serving families, and we only wish we had more dollars. What's going to happen going forward with the budget, we're going to talk about later, but it's a really exciting array of programming. And I think without, in the past, I've run probably 7 or 8 procurements. We've had to do set-asides to allow for our non-PAT, non-NFP programs to make sure they get funding. And we didn't do that in this competitive procurement, and still a huge array of models came through as being highly successful. It was a very competitive process, if you can imagine. It was a very difficult decision on the part of the review panel. But so congratulations to these programs. We're now in process of writing 5-month contract amendments for these guys. And then that's institutionalized in our programs going forward into the next year. So that's my update for the moment. I don't know if there are any questions or thoughts before we move to the next section. So
I just wanted to share a little bit more, if I could, Renee, around 6109. So what DCYF has done is pull together a contracts review team. And so each one of our contracts go through this review team before they can be approved. And we made at least 2 efforts to really petition for the ability for the service portion of 6109 to go through. And we were trying to get creative with what we could do with funding. And unfortunately, that didn't pan out. We also had the same kind of initial response to the training component of 6109. And we were able to then propose that what we would do is use MCV funding solely to support the training portion of 6109. And that was kind of grounded after a couple of rounds in the kind of the same space. So that just also just speaks to kind of where DCYF as an agency is, and really wanting to be careful and cautious and interpreting the initial budget from Governor Inslee, and then the priorities from Governor Ferguson, and making sure that we're aligning with where our state leaders are wanting to move. So that is one of the processes that is different as a result of kind of where we are budget wise, and as a result of kind of wanting to be responsive to the request. So just wanted to share that in that space. But again, are there any questions about kind of these two sections, or any thoughts, anything anybody would like to share? Next slide, please. I think we can go one more. So I'm going to transition this now to Nina. So Nina, please feel free to unmute and go ahead.
Hey, Nellie, sorry, this kind of goes back to 6109, but I had an interesting conversation with PAT National at the National Home Visiting Summit. And some of the concerns that were brought up when we were discussing 6109, especially around PAT, was the ability to stay within model fidelity while working with families in and they are actively working on that and potentially going to be revising some model fidelity stuff. So I don't really have anything other than that, but I know that through those conversations, that was a big concern for the PAT programs, including mine. And that is being actively addressed from PAT National.
Thank you, Alicia. That's good. That's good to know. I think there was, I think we were involved in one conversation just centered around the same topic. So it's good to know that there's active work happening, and I'm hoping that when that happens and we are in a kind of a different space, that we'll be able to explore having a more intentional approach, because I know families who are struggling with substance use disorder are already being served by LIAs and are already being served by a variety of different models, but it would be nice to have some intentional kind of support and approach to supporting families who find themselves in this situation. And we would love to hear more. As you hear more, that would be great if you could share that with us, and we'll do the same.
You ready for me now, Nellie?
I think so. Go ahead, Nina. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see everyone. And I just wanted to do a really brief update. And if you forward to the next slide, please. This is again continuing on the theme of the HVSA SUD procurement. We did award a contract to the RC Warner Consulting Group for planning, training, and coordination for home visiting providers. And we're just beginning. We had, as Nellie described, the process for the awarding of this contract. We had a month delay, and it's a very short turnaround time contract, starting from January 28th through the end of September. So to match with the fiscal year. And so we are really ramping up quickly, doing a lot of front end loading on planning, and are going to be doing a presentation at this afternoon's office hours to our LIAs to get feedback from them as well. And also I meant to say thank you, Alicia, for that update on the PAT conversation. And my cat is wanting to have a conversation right now too, so I'm a little distracted. And also we have had a long break with the workforce subcommittee, much of that due to so many of the changes that were happening and adjusting to things, as well as ramping up for this procurement, and want to share that we are going to get back up and running in 25, have a doodle poll that needs to go out, but also need to review our membership roster because we've had a few transitions of staff and want to make sure that we have the right people on this list who want to participate, because there are some that are also on multiple lists. And so making sure that we are including everyone that wants to be included with the plans that we will do subcommittee meetings in the alternating months in between, rather than on the day of the HVAC, or actually we'll offer that as an option in the poll as well. And part of we will be picking back up the Butler training survey, which is on hold, as well as the SUD work, and revisiting each of the 5 workforce recommendations from the HVAC 2022 workforce recommendations to the legislature. So lots of work to do, and looking forward to doing that with you. And also just wanting to say I'm holding all of us in my heart and mind during this time, as it's been much heaviness. And I'm so grateful to who our workforce is and to who our LIAs are, and how they continue to show up to support families during this time. So thank you. Oh, and there's a handout. There's a full handout on the SUD to give you a little bit more detail and understanding of this. And the one piece of understanding that I do want to convey is that 6109, it really was, the impetus for that was the opioids impact on child welfare placement, as well as family danger, and our family safety. And the SUD training that we're talking about is really about substance use disorders in general, with some targeted modules that address the opioids issue. But we know already that our workforce, or not our workforce, excuse me, our programs are serving families that are facing substance use disorder challenges, and families that have been and currently are involved in child welfare. So we want to acknowledge that that is happening. And so the really, that goes to the heart of what we're doing. And I think that, and we're thrilled about the contractors we've chosen, because it's all steeped in equity-centered practices, and how to operationalize those and improve, deepen those capacities and practices for the workforce. That wasn't very much of a long, short got on, but thank you very much, you guys.
I did drop into the chat the handout that Nina was referring to. That was what we pulled together after we had a series of questions and just some wonderings about what was happening and why now. And so the handout is in the chat, and if there are any questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out. So I just wanted to pause here really quick, and I think we've all been talking about how we've had a series of impacts, and I don't know that we've talked specifically about what they are. So the executive orders that have come out, I think some of the mixed messaging that we've received. And so I just wanted to take a moment before we move on to the next kind of agenda item, just to ask if you're comfortable and willing to share kind of what impacts either happened within your agency as a whole, or that you have seen with families that you're serving. So just wanted to kind of pause here and just have an opportunity for us to talk and to share through that before we pick up with the next agenda item. So just pause. And we're going to get into kind of the impacts and how we're moving through all of the things that are happening within the state and happening nationally as part of the agenda. But we wanted also to have a chance to hear from you and to just create a space for us to engage in conversation.
I can share just most recently group connections, the convening of groups and pulling together in large numbers is fear invoking for families. And so For December, it was okay because that was right before. We had a really large turnout, but January's group connection, there's marketing, there's public marketing that goes out in flyers that identifies where large groups will convene. And so that really, the staff brought forward that, yeah, I don't think my caseload's going to go. I don't think my caseload's going to go. And so thinking about how we, pre-plan to reserve a location to, secure food and resources to bring these families together, just to cause more harm and trauma and stress on them for fear that that might be a target spot. So we shifted like days before, as the staff started to talk about it, and we're like, okay, let's cancel. In lieu of that, there was another training that was Zoom focused that the clients could join into, and do that caseload by caseload. So the parent educators just convened their own caseload and secured this training, but are also going to host individual group connections via Zoom, and then bring them be the runners or, the support. So just being quick to shift and not, talk about that. We sent out an email, basically talking about, we are here to serve, to provide what is needed in the moment, and protection and care is one of those, in the moments of fear. And so to not cause any more, missed opportunities. I think that would have been something, if anything would have happened, we would not be able to live with ourselves. Especially being in Yakima, we're a prime pathway for targets. So anyway, that was just kind of you could just see the calm on the staff's faces when we were like, okay, stop. You've got days, it won't happen. Communicate this out to your families, and let's just do it different. And so they were just like, oh God, thank God, we're so afraid. I said, this is why you get to speak up. This is why you have powerful voices for your families. And don't be afraid to just tell us what your body's experiencing also, for who you care for. So that was just one of the quick pivots of, we don't have to do it this way, especially right now.
Thank you for sharing that, Maria, and I echo Renee's sentiments in the chat. That's a amazing and quick pivot, and it's definitely something that we can draw from too. So I appreciate you sharing that.
I can share, our whole community was really excited last year. We were awarded a $35 million grant, for Clallam and Jefferson counties, which has become very complicated. And so there are many, many, many partners involved in that grant. And so now the uncertainty and seeing what's going to happen and what we've already been doing and money that's already been invested, that is something that our whole community is struggling with right now, of figuring out what's next. So there's just a tremendous amount of uncertainty in that entire workforce project. So that's been one of the funding challenges that we've seen. Another piece that we have seen is, similar to Maria, we have a large immigrant community in Forks that we work with. We've been hosting, in partnership with lots of other organizations, different meetings to discuss, meeting with local law enforcement about what their response will be, meeting with lots of community partners to see what resources are needed. This weekend, there's a meeting that's being held, where there'll be a notary on hand and folks to help with safety planning for kiddos that are left behind, so that families have the opportunity to at least plan for what might happen with their kiddos if they're left behind. Within the agency, we've been hosting listening sessions, and office hours for staff to just voice their thoughts, feelings, concerns. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of answers for them while we walk through that, but we've been walking through it together, which is what we're also sharing with our staff, is that we can't necessarily change some of these things, but we can help families be ready, and we can reduce the trauma as they walk through hard things. So yeah.
Thanks for that, Alicia. It's a hard time. It's a hard time in trying to figure out how best to navigate. And I think oftentimes there's an expectation that we have the answers. And I think that's we across as families are kind of looking. So it's hard to be in a space where like there really isn't an answer yet, and we'll do the best that we can with what we have. And but it's a hard place to be where those answers are not readily available, or not sure if the response that you give today may change in the next 5 minutes, may change in the next hour. So it is a trying place to be. This is taking us a little bit out of kind of the flow of the agenda, but I think it might be a good place for us to also just kind of share what DCYF approaches right now. And I'm not sure if everybody kind of heard, but the Governor Ferguson pulled together or asked that a task force together specifically to address supporting immigrants and refugees who are here in Washington and are part of DCYF's service of Array. And so that committee was pulled together. And I see that Emily's back, so thank you for putting that into the chat. It was pulled together, and I think they've had one meeting so far. We are expecting there to be recommendations or things shared from that meeting here in the next week or so. I think there's some translation happening there, and I'm going to transition this over to Emily because I think Emily has a lot more information about this than I do, but we wanted to kind of share where that piece was. So Emily, do you mind kind of?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I shared a couple links in the chat. If you haven't heard about the task force or Governor Ferguson's executive order that asked for DCYF to convene this, that first link kind of overviews that. And then the second link is a page for the Family Separation Response Task Force updates. And it also has the contact information for Maria Beltran, who's staffing that group. They met for the first time February 11th, and I believe they already have another meeting on the books. I'm not sure exactly when it is off the top of my head. But that second link is where the information and updates will be posted. And I think they are working on, it looks like they have some of the information translated into Spanish and Somali on the webpage. But I believe they're working on some additional documents. If there is any documents that you or any of your partners need translated into a language that we don't have listed on the webpage, feel free to email us and we'll get that for you. I don't have a ton more information on that right now. They just met for the first time last week, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to send them my way and I can work on getting any answers.
In addition to that, DCYF has been really looking across all of our systems and looking at all of kind of our databases to really address and pinpoint where we are asking, or if we are asking, and what we do about that information and how best to ensure that it's protected, should there be any requests for documentation and a request for data from us. So we are kind of actively really kind of thinking through what we have available to us, what we already actively collect, and how best to ensure that families are protected. So that is kind of active work that's happening right now. So that we, again, would be prepared to ensure that we are as protective as we can be. And I think the governor's committed to us not participating in the releasing of information that shouldn't be released. So I think we are fortunate in that way, that I think we have a couple of layers of protection, but I know that that doesn't necessarily comfort families where this is an active and a concern. So, but it's good that we are kind of addressing and looking at and really thinking about where we may have some vulnerabilities and how best to ensure that we are protecting as much as we can. Any thoughts or questions? Erica will be on a little bit later in our agenda to provide kind of a legislative update. And I think there'll be some information there as well about kind of where we are with the budget from a legislative standpoint. So we'll know that we'll hear that when she comes back on. So just wanted to give another minute or two for any other kind of thoughts, questions, or ideas about what we've been talking about before we jump back into the agenda. Might help if I unmute. Emily, if you could bring back up the slide deck.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And again, I know we're talking about and covering a lot of really heavy things today. So as things come up for you, please don't hesitate to unmute and share, or feel free to share in the chat as well. So we don't have Erica with us yet, so we'll skip over this part. And when she's back, when she's on, nope, keep going. Not one more. Okay. So we also just wanted to spend, we've talked a little bit about this already. We've talked about that middle bullet here, and wanted to, again, I think the last time we met in December, we shared with you that we were going to be getting a new secretary, Tana Sen, who was coming from the legislature. She was the chair for Human Services and Early Learning and Human Services in the House. So she is not new to the work, early learning in general. She is a little bit new to home visiting, but isn't new to the importance of early learning in general. She also is new to agency leadership. So she has had a majority of her experience has been in the legislature, and I am not sure, cannot pull up what the other of experiences that she's brought with us. So she has shared with us kind of what her huge goals are for agency. She wants to improve communication as one, and that's communication with NDCYF, and as well as communication with external partners. She's also interested in increasing support, and that is, again, support internally within DCYF, and then also support externally with the individuals that we support, and also thinking about agencies that we contract with to provide DCYF services across the board. So she had support, she had communication, and is it accountability, I think was the other, transparency / accountability. So she wanted to, again, make sure that we are accountable to what DCYF is saying we're going to do, and that we're communicating where we are and the progress that we're making, or the challenges that we have externally. So again, those are her 3 big areas. She's getting more and more familiar with DCYF as a whole. And so she's been doing a variety of different kind of tours through the agency. And so we're waiting to see kind of what this will roll out with a little bit more. She's again been very supportive of the executive order that the governor has signed, but also really thinking through what are other needs that we have within DCYF and the different agencies or different departments within DCYF to support families and to support staff and to support contractors as we kind of maneuver all of the things that we've been experiencing, and as we move further and further into kind of the new administration and things that will probably unfold here over the next several years. So again, just wanted to share with you what her huge priorities are for DCYF, and we'll continue to share as she starts to kind of dive more into what she's hoping this first year will be and what will look like, and what may shift or change. On a much more positive and uplifting note, we have our Caregiver Recognition Month has been the month of February, and we usually partner that with Unsung Heroes. And this is where we have families who are nominated, and we select specific families and honor them at an event that we will be hosting next Thursday. And it is at the Lacey Community Center, typically where we have it. Renee, do you remember what the time frame is for that?
Yes, it is Thursday afternoon. I believe it actually starts at 4:30 or 5, and they offer dinner. And they all the parents who receive the recognition, or caregivers who receive recognition awards, are invited, and their travel is paid for them to attend. They're offered dinner, and there's crafts and fun things to do with kids, and real formal recognition. Sometimes even from folks out of the governor's office. I'm not sure what's on the docket for the next week.
We know that Tanis, the Secretary Sen, is planning to be there for that event. Any questions, thoughts about what we've shared so far? Next slide, Emily. One more. All right. So go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, my opportunity again to be talking about the unknowns. So, and this is a really short update. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what's going on with rates, and we all are in a way because of the state budget uncertainties, as well as all of the turbulence that's happening at the federal level, both of which are important to moving forward with rates. We're really in a hold pattern, and then don't know how we're moving forward until some clarity is offered for that. As many of you know, the decision package that the agency put forward for this coming next year's budget included funding to support full implementation of rates, and that was not included in the governor's proposed budget that was submitted back in December. We're watching, and until we see where we're going with that, we're not really sure how to plan forward. So between that and federal allowability, we're very much in a holding pattern. Again, Not a satisfying report. I don't know if there are any questions. I think the next slide probably just says questions. So questions or discussion. So, oh, no, it doesn't. So, yeah. I mean, I'm just so that you all know, I mean, we're writing new contracts this July. I'm writing a draft that says you're in rates. I'm writing another draft that says you're not in rates in terms of the statement of work. So I kind of feel like that's what we're doing at our end, so that and we're watching what's happening at the legislature.
I know that the other thing that we have shared with you is our plan to ask McVie and HRSA if they can give us permission to use McVie funding or federal funding as part of kind of the rates structure. And the holding pattern that we're in has also prevented us being able to pull together the packet of information that we need to at least submit to HRSA for them to review and say, okay, let's move forward with actually like creating some scenarios about what this would look like so that we can get that federal approval. So there's also kind of a holding pattern there with us being able to move forward with, again, asking for that. We have had a consultant that we've hired that's been looking at kind of any rates work that's been happening with McVie funding. And so we're also kind of awaiting that person's report as to what they've discovered as potential options as part of that process. So we have that work that's continuing to happen so that when we find ourselves in a position, we have a clear kind of picture of what's already out there and what's being done and how that, how successful or not successful those approaches are, so we can make some adjustments. We also have been exploring Family First FFPSA, Family Prevention Services Act. I have to say the acronym first in order to get the words together. So I know that that has been an area that this consultant has also been exploring, because there are McVie grantees out there who have tapped into FFPSA drawdown. And so that's something that we're also looking at as part of this packet. So we're still moving forward with kind of that ask to access federal funds. We just, again, are waiting for some other things to be able to come through the budget, mainly for the state and what the state and investment will be in that space. Go ahead, Dila. You're still muted.
I have a question about rate setting, and I'm sorry, I stepped away for just 1 second. Could you just refresh everyone on which organizations or models have transitioned to rate setting? And given what is going on with the legislature and other things, what is the plan for the people who are already, for organizations that are already using rates?
So your second part of your question is all part of that holding pattern, Dila, but I've been anticipating that we would get those questions, right, based on even a holding pattern. So I don't know yet what it means. The programs that are in rates right now is the community-based outreach doula program, your program, Family Spirit, and Parent Child Plus. So those are the 3 models that are currently in rates and have actually budgets. They've had all experienced budget increases as a result of moving forward into rates during this current fiscal year. The programs that are not in rates right now, the models, are Parents as Teachers and Nurse Family Partnership. They did not experience budget increases this year at all. And so that's a concern of us, which we know. My computer is telling me that I have to restart, or I'm going to be shut down in the next 15 minutes. So, so I'm just telling you that. So I've been holding off, but so that's kind of where we are. And we're acutely aware of both the budget concerns of our, 34 programs who did not get any kind of adjustment this year, and we're on budget hold. And then we also know that there are equity issues associated with a large group of programs, not, sorry, I'm probably saying way more information than I should be, but I just want to, we're all aware of kind of all of this uncertainty is pushing on levers that already felt very challenging within the cohort. So, so that's, and then we have several models because of their size in terms of the number of families they serve and their budgets that are right now rates exempt. And that would be the Early Steps to School Success model, the Early Head Start model, home-based, and then STEEP, our STEEP program. So those are all of our models and what their status is right now. So I don't know if that's helpful, Dila. I know it's, but yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I know I'm obviously in the minority and needing to know this, but it's still, I figure other people will wonder as well.
Well, and no, we're completely aware that we fund a cohort of models and that now we're kind of in a really weird kind of partial implementation phase of rates. And so, and to be honest, we're learning a lot from the programs that are implementing it, right? I mean, you know that. And so we're learning the positives and negatives. So
you don't see the rate structure changing for this current contract?
That's a question that I can't answer, but I think
Okay.
what I would say is probably not.
Okay.
So
I know you don't have complete information, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dila. No, it's a good question and it's fair. It's a fair question. And that's the thing. I mean, I think what I'm trying to hold right now is you're allowed to ask questions, but sometimes we're going to just say, I don't know. And we're also aware that saying, I don't know isn't helpful, but I feel like at least asking the question, you know what I'm trying to say? It helps verbalize where we all are. And I don't think we shouldn't be stopping saying how we are, how we're experiencing things. That's where I'm going anyway with this. That's what we have to do right now is just be out there with what's going on. And so I don't take offense or worry that you're asking really very rational, reasonable questions. So.
And some of the questions that you ask may be things that we haven't even thought about or considered. So we always appreciate, and it's a completely different perspective that we may not have looked at. Any other questions or thoughts? Nina, please go ahead.
Thanks, Nellie. I have actually two questions or sort of question information. This, I think, I keep thinking about how 2020 through 2024, 5 years straight, has been unprecedented circumstances, that each year has had its own, has looked its own way. And but what I have noticed is that this past year, the difficulty of staff participating, home visiting staff participating in at least opt-in programming, and I know Start Early is not here to jump in terms of the programming that they're responsible for, but just I'm wondering, first of all, if there's really been that during this time, if you are seeing any unusual attrition as a result of what is happening in our culture, in our world, in our and in our programming right now, or in what's happening within the state relative to budgeting and uncertainty. And then I also wanted to, and I was also wondering too, if those on this call, I know many of us or many of you are involved in different contracts across agencies in the state or across different sectors within DCYF. And I'm wondering if how that is going relative to navigating messages and information and how, and how supported is your support or communication consistent across where you're doing other work. So that's two very different questions, but yeah, those were the two things I was thinking about. Thanks.
I mean, I think Maria had mentioned earlier that there had been that families were expressing some fear about being in group spaces. And so I don't know if there are others. And I think we also heard a little bit about, I think, the shared concern. I think Lee put something in the chat about that as well. But I don't know that there's been, has anybody experienced families kind of exiting or leaving at this point as a result of what's happening, or is it too early to kind of make those correlations? Just, I think that's what you were asking, Nina, and if that's not accurate, please unmute and correct my
Yeah.
paraphrase.
I think I was thinking a little bit more of the workforce, but in particular too, and I think this is probably not a surprise to others, that relational safety for the workforce has been significant in this past year as well. And really was started to hear about it a little bit prior to the elections, but just this this notion of there being different challenges that are being navigated that way as well by the workforce. And I didn't see you, Cassie. Sorry, I'm glad you're here.
I joined late because I had a conflicting meeting earlier, so no worries, but I'm happy to be here. Thanks, everybody.
Nina, to your point around workforce, the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of attrition, and a big piece of that attrition has actually been around maternity leaves. Through COVID, our childcare situation, which was abysmal pre-COVID, has become even more abysmal, especially around infant slots. And we have had many staff that go on maternity leave, want to come back, wish they could find childcare, and you know, with varying success rates, but often end up leaving the agency when they finally realize that it's just not working. And so when you have new staff and there's so much training at that beginning of onboarding things, they don't often do a lot of those opt-in trainings also, because they're just trying to get going. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but we've seen higher attrition rates due to an outside force around a particular issue, which I think might impact what you're asking for.
Thank you. It's helpful.
There are other responses in the chat. Thank you for sharing
Well,
those thoughts as well.
Well, I really appreciate your comments today too. They really resonate with what we're seeing, I think, at state level as well.
Emily, next slide. So we also just wanted to have an opportunity to speak to some of the things that I think you've also seen in regards to, I'll start with the federal kind of pieces. I think everybody, or most people, heard about kind of the shutting down of a variety of federal funding systems and people being locked out of system is called CMS. Fortunately for McV, we have not experienced an inability to draw down funds. So that has been very, very positive for us. That has not been an issue or concern. And in our kind of conversations with HRSA, that is not an issue or concern at this point. And part of that is the reauthorization for McV extends through 2026, I believe. So it's not come up as an issue or concern. I think there's also been a list that's been circulating of all of the federal grants, and I think that has been a gathered list of the federal grants as a whole, not necessarily everybody who's going to be impacted or is currently being impacted by the slowing in funding. I think we're continuing to hope that things for McV will continue as they are. I think there are some decisions that have to be made nationally prior to, I think it's March 12th, for the federal government to run as a whole. So we continue to kind of watch and are in watching space for that. We've also seen a variety of changes happen at kind of the HRSA level. So the staff who support our grant has shifted. There's more staff covering more regions. So we've seen some consolidation there. We received some information from ASHVI, which is the Association of State Tribal Home Visiting Programs. And it's a kind of a nonprofit that's been put together that helps bring all of the McV grantees together just to support each other and to think through what changes need to be made and they help a lot with advocacy for HRSA on behalf of grantees. And they shared with us that there's been another layoff list for HRSA staff. So we continue to keep our federal partners in mind as we kind of navigate through. There isn't a ton of information flowing through. It's not as free flowing as it used to be. So that's another kind of space that we're in. But as far as kind of access to our McV funding, that has not come up as a concern or an inability for us to access that. So just wanted to pause there and see if there are any kind of questions, thoughts, or if there's any information that people may have heard in other spaces that they want to be able to share. So I'll switch to talking a little bit about our DCYF budget itself. We talked a little bit about the new Governor Ferguson's priorities. And so that list came out in January, shortly after or right before his inauguration. And one of the areas that he had identified as potential place for cost savings has been around kind of management positions within the different departments. And he's also asked for a 6% budget reduction. And so, and the management systems would be our EMS, which is an executive management system. So the positions that are held in there, and then our Washington State managed, so WMS, the management positions as well. So DCYF is currently looking and reviewing out of positions. We are not going to be including, as of right now, any services as part of that 6%. And that is also was identified within the governor's priorities, that was not on the list of things. So there are other things and other ways that are being looked at. So just wanted to express that there is a 6% budget reduction. And as of right now, no services have been identified as being part of that process. But we do have other things that we kind of are looking at. The hiring freeze is one, so there are positions currently that are not being filled. Also, travel, and both kind of out of state and in-state travel is also being limited as part of that being an option. The other piece was not moving forward with any pilots that haven't already been in place, or there isn't kind of earmarked funding for that. So budget wise, again, as Renee mentioned, and I think we've mentioned a couple of times through this, we're still up in the air a little bit. We've been doing what we can to ensure that we are able to keep the funding that we currently have. Even if there isn't a funding increase, we're hoping that funding will not decrease. One of the areas that I think we've identified kind of ongoing, but I think will be highlighted even more, is our enrollment as a whole. So those are kind of questions right now that are being asked from a legislative standpoint, where we've been over the last several years, where we currently are. So that is going to continue to be an area of focus for us as we move through this next state and federal fiscal years and kind of moving forward. So that's been an area that we want to increase kind of our intentionality around, and want to be able to really focus on being able to tell the story of home visiting. So that I think we'll see over at least this next year being an area that we will increase focus on. Any thoughts or questions about what I've shared so far? I'm going to pause us there. We've been I want to pause us there. We've been kind of all together and sitting for almost an hour and a half. So I want to be able to give us a break here. So if we can take, let's take 20 minutes. So that would put us back here at 10:43. So hopefully it gives you a chance to get away from your computer, get up, move, and then we'll finish up part of our agenda, and I believe Erica will be on with us at that point. So let's come back at 10:43.
Nelly, do you want to pause the recording? I don't see the option.
Yes. Hopefully that gave you a chance. Give you a chance to take a slight break. So as we've been in the process of our meeting, we received some additional information from Ashby around some executive orders that were signed last night. So I'm just going to put that into the chat here. And we'll just share information as we come across it. So it'll come in two different text because it's huge. Okay. So I just put it into the chat, and we are going to have an Ashby meeting tomorrow. So we'll have some additional information probably about this and others. And again, we'll do our best to communicate that information as it comes in. And so I think in there you'll see it's one of the things we've tried. HRSA, I think, has tried to not have kind of advertised about McPhee. So again, if there are any questions or thoughts or that you have about what's in the chat, feel free to ask, and we're happy to kind of gather information as we are part of other meetings and be able to share that with you. So we had one other, I think, Soraya, do you mind sharing the slide deck? I think we have one more thing before we have Erica. I think if we go down, I think the only other update we had is around the chair, co-chair. We are with that co-chair, co-chair structure. So when we met in December, left wanting to contact, I think we had a series of people who had been nominated, and I wanted an opportunity to touch bases with them. I have been able to touch bases with most. Still have a couple of people that I want to connect with about the chair co-chair structure and their interest in being part of that. The hope is to have those individuals be part of the planning for our April HVAC meeting. So again, I have not been able to make contact with every single one, but I'm hoping that by the time that process is completed, we'll have at least identified 2 individuals who'll be willing to kind of step into this space. And so I just wanted to again reiterate that it isn't that the chair and co-chair would take over every single aspect of HVAC. There's a planning committee that meets twice a month. And so they would be part of that planning committee, and then they would be kind of helping to support the meeting alongside our DCYF support. So again, the hope is that we would then have individuals who are able to share, who are able to kind of share with DCYF leadership kind of what HVAC, the direction HVAC is interested in going, or if there are things that come up where there may need to be additional information or some advocacy done on behalf of what HVAC is doing. It then doesn't put our DCYF staff in the position of having to kind of talk to our leadership about something that may or may not align with where DCYF is headed. So I'm hoping that we'll have that kind of in place and ready to go by April. Any questions or thoughts about the chair co-chair structure or where we are? Right. Any questions or thoughts about the update provided in the chat? I believe the legislative update is the last piece on our agenda, and I do not see Erica on yet. I feel like every time I say that, I then hear Erica's voice go, "I'm here," but I don't see her on yet. She said she'll be here as close to 11 as she possibly can. And I think we have covered every agenda item outside of that space. So we have about 10 minutes until she is on. I don't have a message from her saying that she's expecting to be delayed. So is there anything that anybody wanted to kind of touch bases on that we could do in this next 10 minutes? The other thing we could do is This would be an opportunity to do some multitasking. And as soon as Erica's on, we could be back on. What are people's thoughts? Why don't we do this? If there isn't anything else that we want to talk about or cover, this could be an opportunity for you to do a couple of different things. I will call Erica here and see if she's planning to be on at 11. If she isn't able to make it at 11, what we may do is just end our time together. And thanks, Cassie. And then we can send a legislative update as part of the follow-up documentation. So it's about 9 minutes. I'll do a phone call here. Feel free to turn your cameras off and do some multitasking. And then I'll see if Erica is unable to be on at 11, then I'll come back and we can make some decisions about what we do next.
Welcome, Erica. We're all meeting. Yeah, I'm so glad to see you. I think what we'll do is we'll start. We were on hold waiting for you to come join us. We got through our whole agenda. So we're very excited to see you and hear whatever it is we don't know yet about, which is probably a lot still. Anyway, so I think with that, Nellie is actually, she's on the phone right now, but we can go forward. I'm going to give a minute maybe for people. We gave them an opportunity to multitask while we were waiting. And so maybe give a chance. I guess what I'm going to say is if people wouldn't mind just either coming off onto video or giving a thumbs up so we know people are back and attending to what we're going to hear from Erica. I'm seeing a lot of movement. So we were all being very flexible. So kudos to all of us for being flexible. And it looks like we've got a lot of folks joining us, reactivating their joining. So I'm going to go mute and let you take it away, Erica. Not sure if you have slides to share or what.
Yeah.
So
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay, Renee?
yes.
Okay, cool. Hi, greetings from our capital, hence the marble behind me. Sorry for being late, I think, and I appreciate your flexibility. It's a little bit of a whirlwind over here. Hi, Emily. I apologize. I do not have slides, and I should probably put in the chat, and I will once I stop talking, the latest Start Early newsletter. I probably, like you, have more questions than answers at this stage, but what I can do is give you a little sense of what is going on, some context of the state budget, because really that is pretty much what is happening right now at the Capitol and in Olympia. I'm sure you're all very aware of our state's fiscal situation. We are on day 39 of our 105-day long session, the start of our long planning for the 25-27 biennium. And we, of course, have a new governor. Our friends at DCYF have a new secretary in former Representative Tana Sen. And we have a lot of new legislators. Honestly, there was so much movement there at the start of session, given all the dominoes, that I'm going to disclose I gave up counting how many new legislators there were, because there were so many shifts of people, moving over to the Senate, their position being filled. And it's been a bit of a whirlwind, a lot of new leadership, a lot of new people, new folks filling in at the governor's office. So for example, Mary Sprudiger-Lant, who used to join me at these HVAC meetings and presenting, is now Governor Ferguson's policy advisor. So she's sitting in a new seat. So I'm personally missing her at DCYF, but certainly glad that she's in that role with Governor Ferguson's office. So it's a little bit of a bittersweet time, as we're seeing all these movements occur. But as I mentioned, the budget crisis is looming large over everything. And I would be remiss if I didn't note the uncertainty from the federal level, that is adding additional anxiety, stress, and questions, personally and professionally. So I feel like we need to acknowledge that as we're all personally and professionally responding and addressing to that, to these situations and questions. So yeah, there's a lot, which is an understatement and poorly said, but I'm not sure how we have to compartmentalize in some ways and keep going on because we have a lot to do. At our state here, we face, as you probably know, roughly a $12 billion deficit over the 4-year. As you probably know, our state is required to have a 4-year balanced budget. That is a relatively new concept. The last time we were in this level of a budget crisis, we did not have this 4-year balanced budget requirement. There is some interest in trying to get that 4-year balanced budget requirement relaxed, paused. I'm one of those that is arguing, given the uncertainty from the federal level, is this an extra pressure we need right now? I'm not sure how well that's going to go over, but nonetheless, it is a requirement that we have. We saw our caseload forecast come out last Friday. The good news, I suppose, is that our caseloads are relatively flat, meaning we didn't see any big shifts of, oh goodness, our Medicaid caseloads are higher than we expected. Caseloads essentially demonstrate, what does the state have to spend money on? It's entitlement, things like prisons, K-12, Medicaid, like I mentioned. So them being flat is honestly a good thing from a budgeting standpoint. On March 18th is when we'll see our next revenue report. So that will help say how much money we have. And all indications are it is expected to be worse. So people are feeling like our budget situation is not likely to improve. So our budget writers are preparing for cuts. At the same time, there are conversations about securing additional revenue. So there are conversations about that. I don't know what will happen. If anything, will things be legally defensible? How soon can the money happen? If it goes on the ballot, would it pass? Those are conversations that are above my pay grade, if you will. But I think the common understanding is, even if the legislature does adopt new revenue sources, there will be cuts and there will be significant cuts. So that is something we are all, bracing for. Concurrently, state agencies were required by February 6th. They were given an assignment to submit to Governor Ferguson roughly 6% budget reductions. Additionally, they were asked to submit recommended internal cuts around management, as well as some external facing positions, except for K-12 and corrections related. Additionally, higher education was only asked to submit 3% reductions. I'm assuming the higher education was because they get so many of their funding is, tuition based, I suppose. That information has not yet been made public. Governor Ferguson, who has not done a lot of media availability, he did a press availability, last week, where he mentioned that press availability was in reference to the his response to what's going on at the federal level. He did mention that next week, that he mentioned that he and his team are reviewing the agency reduction packages excuse me, I need a little water. I have a tickle in my throat, sorry. Really a sign that I'm talking too much. That, excuse me, that Governor Ferguson will be releasing, his response and recommendations to the legislature for potential cuts anywhere from February 25th to February 27th. And that concurrently, the agency reduction list will be made public. The Washington State Standard printed what the agency targets for cuts were in terms of monetary amounts. DCYF was asked to prepare $300 million-ish. For reference, that was the third highest state agency amount. DSHS was 700-ish million. Healthcare Authority, which is our state's Medicaid agency, it was around like, going off memory, so don't quote me here exactly, it was like 435 million. And then DCYF was around 300 million. Because of the nature of DCYF's funding and its purposes, the bulk of those funding reductions will come in early learning. A lot of its child welfare money is federal, and JR, juvenile rehabilitation, sits in the corrections kind of space, meaning it's public safety related. So I do not know what is on those lists. I will find out with everyone else. And I can say that from a philosophical standpoint, in talking with budget writers and talking with staff and OFM, which is what I'm spending my days doing, you know, the general philosophy about how they're going around about these budget cuts, which real clearly no one's excited about, everyone feels awful about. I think it's important that we recognize that this is not something that anyone is wanting to do. The philosophy is, can we delay things that haven't started yet? They do not want to cut services to people, you know, they do not want to, you know, stop, you know, cash benefits to families, you know, remove Medicaid from active families, people, cut off services. That is like last resort, which is unfortunately what happened during the Great Recession. They want to avoid that as much as possible. So they're looking at what can we delay, and we're seeing that already with the Fair Start for Kids Act. There are bills that would delay income eligibility expansion that was slated to take place on July 1st. ECAP entitlement, which was slated to take place 26-27 school year. So that's kind of one of the philosophical pieces, is delay things that haven't started yet. They're looking at, you know, the proverbial change in the couch cushions, you know, what can be caught that's there, you know, spoiler alert, there's not much. It's a little reminiscent of what's going on at the federal level. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little triggering, right? There's also underspends. So when there's underspends on books, which there are underspends in lots of programs throughout state agencies, frankly, those are vulnerable and likely will be swept in order to balance the budget. That is probably you know, a place that lawmakers will look to. And, you know, again, the focus is on services to people, services to vulnerable people. And it's a little bit of last in, first out as well. So newer programs are more vulnerable than more established programs, if you will. So smaller programs, pilot programs are also looking at, you know, this is not the year to say, let's do a report, let's do a study, let's form a committee. They're going to be like, no committees, no studies. It's not the year to do a, you know, stakeholder group where there's traveling, you know, there's no advisory groups, nothing like that costs that type of money. That there will not be openness to that given the fiscal situation. it is also, and then I'll stop talking, real tricky from an advocacy standpoint because, you know, we make these arguments about the why it's important. And honestly, it's everyone's making the why. It's literally about pennies, and I'm not being hyperbolic. It's about ensuring that people don't die. That is a bit of the, you know, that's a bit of the threshold they're at. And some of these, I mean, so when you look at what the state of Washington invests in, it's critical services. So I will pause there and see if I can answer questions. But again, I have probably the same questions you all do. And we're working to get them answered. And so happy to answer what I can. I can't hear anything, so maybe there's no questions.
You're fine. We're not,
Okay.
I'm not in the chat right now. Deela just thanked you for your work and advocacy for sure. I think we all feel that way. But I am, you know, anybody have any thoughts, questions, comments? Now that we have Erica for a brief time between her bustling around, trying to support our work at the legislative level. Yeah. A lot of appreciation for you, Erica. You know, it's got to be hard at your end.
I mean, everyone's got it hard. It's a compounded, right, by the federal piece. You know, I feel like it's a little bit of that. I feel like we're on the beach and the tidal wave, the bigger wave is coming too. And I want people to know, it's not that folks here are ignoring what's going on at the federal level. At the same time, they are having to work in what they know at the moment. And it's, you could spend a lot of time, they're focusing on what they know at the moment. So I'll put my
Thanks for
email-
that. I appreciate that. I think there's some level of frustration, right? That we're not responding to everything that comes out at the federal level. And I think, you know, every minute it changes and there's different response and what we can respond to. And so I think that, I mean, I keep thinking, let's focus on trying to, if the tidal wave's coming, either can we back up or can we bury our feet in the sand? So when it hits us, we're solid. I don't know if that's kind of a dumb analogy, but yeah, thanks for your email in the chat. And again, we have a couple minutes before we want to end our meeting today. Unless, you know, for any thoughts or comments or for sure questions of Erica while we have her.
I'd say just feel free if you have, and no question is a bad question. We're all asking questions ourselves. So it is a really, you know, we always say that unprecedented is everything. Like every day we're like, what is happening? So feel free to reach out if you just say like, what is going on? So we're just trying to hang on to every penny we can. And we also recognize the families that you all work in live as part of larger systems that are impacted by all of these investments and all of these policies and these immigration policies. And I mean, just on and on and on and on and on. So it's overwhelming. So I hope you're all able to take care of yourself too, because it's crushing. I'm gonna go talk to, I've got another meeting with somebody, so I'm gonna head to that. So please all be well. Take care. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks, Erica. I know that we're behind you and all that you're
All right.
doing.
Thank
So
you so much.
reach out
All
if
right,
you
bye-
need anything.
Take
All
care.
right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Yeah. Send you strength. That's a good one, Lee. And Zoe, your comment in the chat was appreciated too. I think that's what we're all trying to figure out as we go forward. What can we do at the state level? How can we skate around all of these challenges and keep ourselves upright on skates? Again, any final comments? Our next HVAC meeting is scheduled for April 17th. It's virtual. Oh, here you go. 9 to 2. Of course, everyone, you can all reach out to those of us at, at DCYF if you have thoughts or questions. And, our team continues to do what we're doing office hours this afternoon, not with a lot of information about this, but as Nina referenced, where we're going for with professional development. And we're just kind of moving forward with what we know. We're not stopping. And so any final thoughts or comments before we end our meeting early today? I think what I focus on with our LIAs is I think we're a very strong group of people with very mission-centered ethics, and we're doing what we can do right now. And I think doing it, knowing that we're doing it together and we're not alone. So we're not alone. We are here together, this group, and across the state, a lot of people of like mind and passion for supporting our most vulnerable families. How can we support each other? Let's keep doing that. And recognizing that we're stressed out. So giving each other grace, holding each other tight, trying to be kind, being open with our frustrations. We're together. So with that, I think we'll end, but knowing that it was good to see people's names and faces.